We've owned that house for I don't know how many years and nobody's ever been moved it.
Well, Jewel, I'd like to read you under this particular code, just so you know, the abandonment issue was number 5. But I'd like to give you some of the other things that also fall under this P&Z dangerous building code. Various inadequacies. Whenever the building or structure or any portion thereof, because of A, dilapidation, deterioration, or decay, faulty construction, which is B, C, the removal, movement, or instability of any portion of ground necessary for the purpose of supporting such building, the deterioration, decay, or inadequacy of the foundation, or any other cause which will cause a likely or partial collapse. That would be number 1. Number 2, manifestly unsafe. Whenever for any reason the building or structure or any portion thereof is manifestly unsafe for the purpose for which it's going to be used. Number 3, inadequate maintenance. Whenever a building or structure used or intended to be used for dwelling purposes because of dilapidation, decay, damage, faulty construction, or otherwise, is determined to be unfit for human habitation in such a condition that it's likely to cause sickness or disease. Then there's the fire hazard. And number 5 was abandonment. You got served under the abandonment.
Yes.
Now, there's probably other things that could have qualified under.
I would ask that you read that definition.
The abandonment? The abandonment, whenever any portion of a building or structure remains on a site after the demolition or destruction of the building or structure, or whenever any building or structure is abandoned for the period in excess of 6 months, so as to constitute such a building or portion thereof an attractive nuisance or hazard to the public. Portions of that also, could apply, but then you also look at, okay, say you have a house for sale. It's only 10 years old. Is that abandoned?
No.
Do any of you have any other comments or questions?
I just have a comment, and as we go around town and look at a lot of these buildings, they're just unsightly and unattractive, and certainly the P&Z board, has done a lot of things to try and clean this up, and here's one of their efforts before the council to help us, go about that. So when we have something before us that's obviously been left unattended, as Nick has said, is a detriment to any of the surrounding, properties. I think we have to look seriously at, when do we finally, put our foot down and say, enough's enough. And, so like, especially even with the first 3, just because I voted that it was perhaps served under the wrong area does not necessarily mean that I think it's a, property that's acceptable as far as appearance in the community. I think we need to certainly work with P&Z, to come up with how we're, going to really address this problem. And I go around town and I kind of shake my head too, and I think, so I certainly don't want to send the wrong message to the P&Z that we really aren't going to do anything, or we aren't interested, or we don't care, because that's just absolutely the opposite of what I think. I think all 4 properties here that we're talking about, are not something to be proud of as far as Sac City is concerned. So I commend the P&Z for at least for making an effort, trying to do something. Perhaps we've got some issues with exactly how we're going to proceed, but I think in that vein we do need to proceed with addressing this problem with the appearance of our community, because if it doesn't look good, folks, it just says what we think about our community.
And then where's the time element involved? Is this going to be looking this way for a year, 10 years, the next 20? At some time, I think, like you said, Bill, we need to sit down with this P&Z, okay, anybody that meets this qualification, and everybody in town should be served under that. That falls under those guidelines. A, and B, they need, okay, what guidelines are we going to use? But I agree, these buildings do need to be, because we can't keep going here, okay, 2 years from now, that hole is still in the roof. a year from now, that hole is still in the roof, and it looks dilapidated, and there's no paint on these buildings, for whatever reason. We need to sit down with P&Z, or come up with a plan here that can alleviate any misunderstanding and let the community know that this is what's gonna happen. And you will be served.
Thank you.
And that's gonna be it.
I think that's a great idea.
That's what we're asking on P&Z.
Oh, we're asking.
And that way, everybody's gonna, in the whole town is gonna be on the same page. This is what's gonna happen, just because nothing has happened in the last year, 5 years, 10, whatever. We need to, you know, this is it, this is the deadline, no more. What does the rest of the council think, something like that?
I agree.
Because otherwise, this is just gonna drag on and on.
And I mean, we have a hard enough time getting something tore down, for instance, the Barbell building, how many years did it take? And even going through the court process, it takes forever.
But I think that way the people in the community know exactly where we stand. They'll know exactly where they're gonna stand, and everybody's gonna have to be on that page, and there's gonna be some action. That way the P&Z isn't gonna be the bad guy, you know, everybody, hey, this is a community, this is the rules that you choose to live in this community, this is the way it is.
Being a property owner brings
We asked them-
Responsibility.
Yeah, we asked them to develop these rules to live by. If we don't help them enforce them, why do we have them? We need to work together to see that this is accomplished.
We have not come up with these on our own.
Right.
This went through Region 12, COG. I mean, they've been guiding us through these. And so this is what we're going by. And so our hands are tied.
progress.
And unless we have some guidance from the council as to, no, you can't do that, you can do this, you can't do that, you know, we need to know what you expect of us.
I think that's a real good start in the conversation, because I'm not
Really?
certain that's been there. You know, I think there's been some communication gap between here and there.
We've had one of you on our council
Right.
at every meeting.
Yeah, well, like the last meeting, you know, I was never asked, well, what do you think, Nick? I sat there, first time I was sitting here.
That's the
I
first
asked
time
one
you've been quiet for a long time.
And you know why? Because otherwise it got to be 2 hours and you never requested anything. That
Are
what
you-
think
You
in my
might have to
opinion?
request from
We
you,
can
you know
discuss
that.
this further at another time, but are you ready to make a motion to close the hearing, or is there other discussion? Is there a second? Call for a vote?
Second?
I said,
Councilman Prohart?
yes.
Johnson?
Yes.
Brennan?
Yes.
Brenner?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Then moving on to 1, consideration of resolution number 2010-18 entitled Resolution in Order.
Can I ask one question?
Yes.
Can I take the notice down and go in now?
Depending on what happens in the resolution.
Okay.
Would you like to speak about it?
Same story as before with the stone properties. You have two different versions. One is, of course, an absolvement. The other one is a directing to abate under the current charge.
Additional comments, questions? Are you ready to vote? Or make a motion, excuse me.
I'm not so sure I have enough information on the property there. Okay, I don't know what we're doing last time.
Well, my concern is just not only the general appearance of the building, but the hole in the roof. And, you know, it's just,
The hole is really not all that big. I mean, compared to your building down here, you could drive a truck through. I mean, you know, I will have my son get up on the roof and fix it as soon as I can. And I will fix the window again.